Life of Nathan is a story idea I had planned back in late 2015. Its entire focus was, of course, on the titular character Nathan Freund, but it also focuses on other characters such as his adopted sibling Rachel Goldberg and best friend Grace Bonham. The original plot of the story was my interpretation of the lore of the popular horror game Five Nights at Freddy's, which, if you don't know, is a horror game series by Scott Cawthon about haunted animatronic robots. Though I scrapped the concept of it since I lost interest in the game. This is the plot as of current. Keep in mind that it's all still a work in progress. The Freunds were an average family, consisting of Julius and Juliet Freund, the eldest son Nathan, and their youngest son, Marcus. Everything took a turn in their lives as one day Juliet decided to adopt Rachel, not knowing much about her origins. Each day Julius suddenly felt like there's danger about to pounce on them one day, so he keeps a firearm around him all the time, making the whole "my daddy's got a gun" thing make sense. Growing up, Rachel always had these destructive tendencies and impulses, which everyone kept telling her to try and control them. All of that pretty much led her to threatening other kids and getting into fights. Nathan and Marcus later on made friends with Grace. Grace is into sex, and their parents weren't big jerks about it, even if it was 1980s America. They decided whatever identity Grace wants to be is of their child's own choice. Besides Grace, they had other friends. Those being Carmen, a popular rich girl from their elementary, and Hal, one bully they somehow made friends with. They were one day invited to a family diner to attend the birthday party of Olivia, Grace's sister. Though things go a bit wrong when some kids started disappearing from the crowded scene. The three main characters went out to find out what it was, and it was literally just a murder. A lot of kids were murdered in the scene, especially Marcus, Carmen, and Hal. The kids panic then run, though Rachel stops a bit, thinking she could use the old taunt she uses on her school bullies onto the old clothed man with an axe. Though there was something in his eye that seemed to click in her. No time to process that she's supposed to run away. Everyone in the party is then alerted by the killer, and they all panic. Except for Julius, because he literally has a gun he could use as danger steps in. Police and court stuff happen. Julius is then off to jail too, as with the murderer, for he literally shot a man in the gut, but he gets a shorter sentence than him. The murderer was then revealed to be named Vincent Goldberg. He was also a leader of an infamous cult that was said to be crude in their actions to appease whatever false god they worship. Back in the house, everyone is in distress. Nathan and Juliet are in more distress, obviously, since their brother/youngest son is dead and their father/husband is in jail for committing some actual assault. Rachel, however, is shaken about how the one who murdered her friends and brother happens to have the same eye of purple as her. She could be cruel and heartless, yes, but not cruel and heartless enough to actually take some, if not a lot of people's lives. A funeral came after that. Juliet then developed a drinking habit to cope with the pain, and it did not help with raising her remaining children, as she would neglect them at a lot of times. Things didn't get better either when Julius came back from jail, because they would argue a lot. Juliet then died from some alcohol poisoning and kidney failure later on, and after that Julius developed some sort of brain disease that he never recovered from, and then died. Nathan and Rachel were still teenagers when that happened, and had to take care of themselves, until one day they were taken in by the Bonhams to live with them instead. No, they never heard of any uncles or aunts they could contact. Juliet didn't want to be involved much with her side of her family, and something bad happened with Julius' family. So they never heard of any other family members outside of just them. By the time they're now adults, they had to deal with a lot more things. Not only do they still have to process and cope with the losses of their family members, but they have to struggle with surviving in a capitalist society. Though Grace and Olivia have jobs now, Rachel is still processing how she could get one, while Nathan's last job's building was suddenly burned to the ground. It was by now that Rachel had found out who her real father was, being Vincent Goldberg, the one who had killed her friends way before. So she sets up a little adventure for her to try and find out what was the explanation to all of this, the killings, the rumored cult, the weird purple eye, everything.